Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we're doing a video on the FV4202, the original British Tier 10 medium tank. This is not one of my favorite mediums, and there's going to be a little bit of a spoiler for the video, but I am excited to say it. I had a crazy game, that'll be the last game in this video, that was kind of a sign for me to go ahead and collect some clips for this vehicle and talk about it because A, it's one of the oldest tanks in the game, and B, because I really just kind of wanted to share a really crazy game. Apologies here. I'm actually not trying to block this guy. I know it looks like I'm just being a dick, and he's shaking his gun at me. I actually ended up taking a phone call right as this game started, and just decided, I went AFK and kind of looked up and saw that. Oh, my bad, guys. Really unfortunate timing there. Wasn't trying to be a dick about anything. So the FE4202, this was the first British Tier 10 medium when those were released into the game, not too long after release. This tank was kind of unique when it came out. It was kind of cool. It had some really low lows and fairly decent highs, which is really interesting. How they balance vehicles back in the day versus now. Vehicles I feel like that come out, they kind of have to be really, really strong with very little downside to keep people's attention and incentivize players to play them. That's why I really like a lot of these old vehicles. But this tank has not really undergone too many changes, believe it or not, since it's been out, and considering how long it's been in the game, it's kind of surprising. But we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Ultimately, this did end up getting a sister tier 10 medium, the Centurion Action 10, and that's believe me, we're going to talk about that too if we're talking about the FV4202 because that tank has quite a bit of influence in terms of how this tank was handled by wargaming, believe it or not. So what were you getting with the FV4202 that you couldn't get elsewhere in the game when it dropped in? You only had three other medium tank lines. You had effectively the Russians, the Germans, and the Americans, the Patton, the E50M, and the T62A. But what you got was the best gun depression in the game at the time. There's nothing with more than 10 degrees of gun depression, unless there's some really weird niche pick I really can't think about. To my knowledge, 10 degrees was as good as it got. This is before you had like the Swedes with their hydro pneumatic suspension and some strange tanks like the Sture Mill, which has like 14 degrees of gun depression, that tier 7 German tank destroyer. So 10 degrees was pretty much as good as it got. And it was better than the Patton with its 9 degrees, and it was better than the E50M with its, I believe, 7, maybe 8 degrees that it had, and a whole hell of a lot better than the T62A with its 5 degrees of gun depression at the time. So the name of the game was definitely work ridge lines, be that medium that sits on hills, uses its gun depression, makes enemies miss shots. Kind of like you see I'm doing here. I'm not really using too much gun depression, but I'm definitely playing medium tactics, and I kind of really upset this Object 268. He's not having a great game, and he's trying to get me. He's even firing heat rounds, and you know, um, not really working out too great for him. I've already bounced one heat round from the Object, so you might think, this thing has great armor. We'll talk about that. So you get 10 degrees of gun depression. You also get a 105 millimeter gun, kind of the standard tier 10 105 mil gun, 268 standard pen. At the time it came out, 390 alpha damage. This was one of the recipients of the universal 420 alpha damage buff to tier 10 medium tanks not too long ago here. So what else is special about this thing? Well, kind of one of its strengths and its weaknesses is its premium rounds. This thing gets the same round that the Centurion 7-1 gets, I kind of talked about, which is a 210 millimeter high explosive squash head or Hesh round, which is effectively an HE round with really, really good pen. And it wasn't too bad when the game was released back, when this thing came around. 210 pen is enough to get through a lot of medium tanks in the game, especially if you're shooting things like their lower plates. It's also enough to get through the sides of heavies and tank destroyers if you're kind of bold enough to load it. High explosive doesn't behave too well in console. PC, high explosive is way better, but you don't have a high penetration premium round. So this tank has never been the best with dealing with real heavy armor. And for the era that was introduced, that really wasn't too much of an issue. A lot of heavies that are super heavies, namely the Germans, the Mouse and the E100. Those were in the game at the time, but they were missing some armor buffs. E100's turret wasn't as tough, and same with the Mouse. Those have kind of gotten buffed over time. And it wasn't a big deal. 268 pen, I felt for the most part, was enough to get through most tanks you're going to be fighting. It would be really useful right here in this game. You see, I'm kind of running away from this flank, not because I necessarily have to, but we're gonna have some pretty heavy armor rolling up, and I don't have the penetration on the gun to really contest their tough armor. They're not just gonna be nice and neat and say, "Here's my lower plate, go ahead and shoot it." They're gonna play hold down, they're gonna show some awkward angles, and a high penetration round is gonna help you deal with that. I just don't have the gun for it, so I decided to try and see if I could help secure this flank. What else about this tank? Well, the armor was kind of hit and miss, I'll be honest with you. The I was really upset with that shot there. I had no clue where it went. We'll talk a bit more about the gun in a second when it comes to that. The upper front plate, you'll see it a couple times if you're not familiar. It's sloped back incredibly well, and it's roughly I think it's 120 or 121 millimeters of raw thickness. And with the angle it's presented at, that thickness is actually going to be pretty impressive if people aren't shooting down on it to negate some of that sloping. It's not ridiculously thick. It's not as thick as, say, an E50M's upper plate, but it's angled well, and you'll get quite a few APCR bounces, especially because I'll talk about ammunition a little bit for people who don't know. The types of ammo in this game that are most prominent being armor piercing, APCR, and heat. Those rounds, that guy just bounced off my plate, I'm pretty sure as well. Those rounds have different degrees of normalization. So armor piercing by default, I believe, gets 5 degrees of normalization. APCR only gets, I think, 2, and heat gets 0. And what that means is if you have 5 degrees of normalization and you hit armor angled at, say, 50 degrees, it'll negate 5 degrees of that, and it's like you're shooting armor angled at 45 degrees effectively. So only armor piercing and composite ridge you get that. So armor piercing is the best at dealing with angled armor. Heat is the worst. But there's also another factor to include there. Armor piercing rounds will automatically ricochet if they hit armor that they don't overmatch at an angle of 70 degrees or more. APCR is a bit worse, I believe. I think it's 68 degrees due to its inferior normalization. And then heat rounds, I believe the number is like 85 degrees. So heat almost always rolls for penetration. And it's why heat rounds specifically do some real funky stuff if you're side scraping or if they hit some crazy good angle part of your turret. If they hit, say, an 80 millimeter armor plate at 84 degrees before it'll just bounce. Maybe that thickness is 300 millimeters because it's not a lot of armor, but it slopes so crazy. The problem being that the heat round you're shooting, let's say, has 330 millimeters of penetration. Well, even that 80 millimeters of armor angled at 84 degrees with 300 millimeters of effective. I'm making these numbers up, by the way. Don't quote me on this. I'm just giving an example. The heat round will still go through. An armor piercing round with 500 millimeters want to go through. An APCR round of 1,000 millimeters of penetration want to go through. But a heat round, if it rolls for penetration and gets a higher penetration roll than the effectiveness of that armor, even at extreme angles, it'll still penetrate. So that's what makes heat so deadly in this game, and things like the Jagdpanzer and stuff like that. So that first game wasn't too crazy. I just kind of wanted to show how the tank operates in a hold down environment and kind of the weakness of not having a high penetration heat round. The other thing you saw in that game, specifically with that one shot I kind of freaked out about, is this gun. So this gun, even though it is accurate when you're fully aimed, and it has always been the case, there's quite a bit of bloom on it. Very similar to the Centurion 7.1, and actually very similar to the Centurion Action 10 when that tank was introduced to the game. So Wargaming introduced the Centurion Action 10. I think partly, well, obviously, because it already existed on the PC version, but also the reason it was introduced on the PC version is because the FV4202 was not very popular. A lot of people would kind of get to the Centurion 7.1 at tier 9 and then just stop right there because the tier 10 was kind of underwhelming with its 40 kilometers of hour top speed. These tanks were incredibly slow when they were introduced and took quite a while until all the Centurions and this were buffed to get 50 kilometers an hour. But before that, their kind of solution to that and the tier 10 British medium, question, what do we do here? How do we make this more attractive? Is I went ahead and introduced this Centurion Action 10, which not by all metrics when it was introduced is better, but certainly today. So that tank goes as a standard, I believe 53 kilometers an hour forward without, running a turbo or anything else like that, going downhill and such. On the flat, 53 kph. This thing nowadays does 50, so it is slower. The Centurion Action 10 also gets those wonderful heat rounds. 330 millimeters of penetration, and there's going to be a lot more cases, unfortunately, in the game where you need more penetration more than you need more damage from a high explosive round. And the other thing too is even the non-premium Hesh on this tank and the Centurion, it's still really, really good HE. It has 105 millimeters of pen. So if you're finding things like leopards and lightly armored vehicles that aren't complete paper, like, the Grill 15 and that line of tank destroyers and light tanks and such. The HE rounds on these mediums and Britain as a whole, because they also get on their heavies, are really effective and really consistent. So you don't really need the premium Hesh, if I'm just being completely honest. It's a bit more of a meme than anything. And the heat rounds on the Centurion Action 10, combined with its superior mobility, really kind of set it to be better than this tank and much more usable with how fast the games go. In addition to that, the Centurion Action 10 didn't always have better camo, but that tank, when wargaming in the past couple years, has kind of revisited old lines and buffed them, received some pretty crazy buffs not too long ago. I want to say it was within the past year and a half. They gave it a lot more health. This thing right here has 1950 health, as where the Centurion Action 10 kind of eclipses it. I believe it's in the ballpark of 2100, maybe 2150. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's definitely over 2000. So it has the HP advantage. The armor layout on the Centurion Action 10 is very similar to this too. It has a worse upper plate, but neither of these tanks have an upper plate that really make you feel comfortable enough to call it a strength or rely on it. You'll get a lot more balances on this thing's upper plate than the Centurion Action 10, but it's nowhere consistent enough to be considered a real strength in that regard. The other thing the Centurion Action 10 got was a pretty massive and sizable DPM buff, so it has a better rate of fire, and it's got the heat rounds. And the most significant buff, I think, well, I'll start with the second most significant buff. It got a camo buff, so that thing has just about 300 meters of still concealment, as where this thing is sitting at 310. So it is more stealthy with the same view range, so it'll be outspotted. Thank you, artillery. I was camping too hard. I was only going 50 kph. I'll try to go faster next time. I jest. I get frustrated by artillery like everybody else, but we gotta live with it because it's in the game. But the most significant buff the Centurion Action 10 got was its gun handling. The Centurion Action 10 I actually hated along with this tank because the guns were just so much worse than something like an M48 Patton. They had worse DPM, which wasn't the problem, but this amount of bloom, and you're going to see it here, and I don't know how the hell I bounced off a Waffentrager E100, but that just happened. You'll see the amount of bloom, and the problem with this amount of bloom on a medium tank specifically is that you get two options. Is A, snap the shot before you're fully aimed, which means you might miss a lot of your rounds, which happens unfortunately quite frequently with this tank, or you have to sit still. And sitting stills in mediums and aiming is a recipe for disaster. You want to be mobile, you want to be moving. Your armor is good, not great. This isn't heavy tank armor, and the more you sit still, the longer the longer you give enemies rather to go ahead and just get a good shot into your weak spots or the weaker spots of your armor. So, as you saw in that first game when I was finding the object 268, for example, I wasn't just sitting still when I was hold down. I was moving forward and backward. And it got to the point where I bounced one of his 390 millimeter heat rounds off this tank. So that's how you want to play mediums. But when you're blooming this much, it just means you're far, far less effective. And you'll have a lot more frustrating games and experiences when it happens. This map, Live Oaks, talk about the map for a second in this match. Really one of the best maps in the game. I think there's a lot of opportunity for every tank of class to do well. The big thing I want to note here in this, we won that southern flank pretty easily. They didn't really send any tanks down there per se. But if you see where a lot of my team is right now, over at J4 in those buildings, please, 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 if you guys win the southern flank from the north, do not advance into those buildings. It's a trap. They have low ground where that tank destroyer just got spotted at. They have high ground up here, and you're just going to get outspotted, and you have no concealment. You have no way to fight back. What I did hitting that low ground and then moving my way up through the central swamp, that's what you want to do because it gives you shots into that object 277 you saw, so you can support the other flank now that you've won the southern one. And then you can come up here, get the flanks of all the campers trying to shoot the guys sitting by that trap, those buildings down there, and you could really just do a lot of damage. You see here I have 4,400 spotting damage. I mean, I've done 3,600, make that 3,800 damage this game, which is a good game, but the spawning damage in this game, that's really what kind of put me over the edge in terms of experience towards the end. Kind of getting low on health here, so need to be a bit more careful, but playing this map and going through that flank, this is the winning play. And this is why I like mediums as a whole. You could do this, what I just did. It's not something specific to the FV4202, but you could do this in pretty much any medium tank that has some good gun depression. And even if you don't have gun depression, you could still spot. You just really can't fire too often. But you see here, I'm using those 10 degrees, and it is really nice to have 10 degrees gun depression. But the battle impact of this game, had I not fired a shot, I think we still could have won. And even if you're, just spotting tanks, you saw all these tanks I'm spotting, they can no longer shoot my guys down south. And you see that they're able to push up now. Had I not fired a shot and had my team not even taken advantage of my spotting, they this play still would have been impactful because now that tanks are spotted, they're falling back into cover. They're no longer using their view range. They're no longer shooting at teammates. So it's a really kind of a multi-factored benefit. The things you do in each game, you can't win every game, like I've said in the past, but you could definitely try to influence it. So that was that game right there, and that was just over. I think that was 10.5K combined between raw damage and spotting damage. So really, really good result there for me in the FV4202. No surprise there. Mastery badge, patrol duty, pretty good amount of credits for a tier 10 game as well, no boosters. So the FV422 in 2026, it's a really odd tank to pick. I think anyone going up this line, I would recommend getting the Centurion Action 10 first, and then if you just really like your British mediums, you can go ahead and get this one as well because the Centurion 7.1 is a pretty satisfying tank to play. I've done a video on that and talked about it. But if you're satisfied with the Centurion Action 10, and maybe you don't like playing tier 9s too much because the matchmaker really sucks, you're not really missing out much on this tank, I'm afraid. Maybe you like the look of it. I think the Action 10 looks better. Centurions are just really good looking tanks, but you could do well in this tank. And as you're going to see, this is the game I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the video. And when I got this game before the other two games you saw in this video, and I knew there was a sign. I have to do I have to do an FE4202 video now. It's not my choice. It's been decided for me. The wargaming gods have said that you have some pretty good material, so now you gotta sit here and talk about this tank you don't like so much, and have kind of a crazy game. So we're playing on Pro Karavka, and I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of talk more about the game here. Excuse me, I'm gonna take a sip of my beverage. Sorry about that. So we're playing Pro Karavka here. Encounter battle, and this is a really great map for mediums with good view range and decent camo, like the FE4202 and a lot of others, as well as tank destroyers that are stealthy, and light tanks and artillery, unfortunately. Thankfully, no arty in this game. Probably why it was a good game. Artillery just kind of ruins things generally. You see my opening play here. Even though I am planning on playing the hill, I decided to make an opening play where I could do a couple things at the same time. I'm obviously doing damage to a couple heavy tanks and slower tanks trying to go to the hill, but more crucially, I know more or less what competition we have on the hill, right? We saw that medium going up there. I spotted an E75 as well. There ends up being a Centurion AVRE that makes his way up there at some point. You never spot him. And I spot this Conqueror who doesn't seem like he's going up to the hill. He's actually moving up. You can see him on the map right there. He's moving up the flank. He's not going hill. So I have some really good and crucial knowledge and intel. And this 4M103, he's not going to have a good time. If you guys are going to play the mid ridge, nothing wrong with it, but you have to know for a fact that either no one's up here, or if there are people up here, you play a lot lower on the ridge until your team that goes to the hill spots them, and then you could support them. You really can't go that far up, and the M103 reverse is really slow, unfortunately. It has a very low top speed reversing, and he learned that the hard way. So here I have a decision to make. I still have some tanks in the mid to fight, and obviously some tanks on the hill. But I look behind my team. There's no one behind us, so that Conqueror that's pushing forward, no one's gonna spot him, no one's gonna shoot him, and no one's gonna prevent him from simply rolling right up on me and these other guys on the hill. And if you have a super Conqueror up in your face like that on a hill, it's a rough fight. I don't have premium rounds. He's got more armor, more health, better penetration if he's spamming his premium. Excuse me. Just not a fight I want to take. So I decided to kind of remedy that, and I become the supporting tank in the back that the hill really needs to try and solidify the position if those tanks up top decide to push, and more importantly, if this Super Conqueror decides he wants to flank. So I'm sitting back here and I don't see anything really, and I still see some mediums in the middle. I think, ah man, maybe this wasn't the right play, and I activate the food to make sure my view range maximizes, and there he is. So it was the right call. This guy just rolled right up that flank with no one to stop him and no one to spot him. and now he's sitting hold on against my team, but I've moved to this position, so I shoot his tracks to keep him in place to kinda help them out, and I shoot him I have just super easy shots. The DPM on this thing is pretty good, it's a tier 10 medium, it's nothing special and outstanding like an Object 430, a T62, an STB, but it's a you don't wanna get shot by a tier 10 medium on reload, man, they all hurt, and here's the big push I was really concerned about. So they got 3 tanks, it looks like, an AVRE, an E75, and that I think it's the DZT. God, I love shooting AVREs now. That nerf to their armor was just fantastic. You could actually pen them with standard now, and that's super satisfying. Really bad shot here. The gun elevate depression over the back isn't good, so as I aimed over the back to try and get the shot, my gun flicked kind of up, and I missed that shot on the E75. Kind of going to come back to haunt me a little bit here. But we made the play here, and I'm doing my absolute best. This pattern right here, this M48-120, he's kind of the guy that holds the line. And he does, considering it's 3 tanks, man, he does a solid job just doing that. And I'm supporting him as best I can. There's no one else to really help him out, unfortunately, and he gets taken out. But I'll just say it. If he had done no damage this whole game, and his only contribution was holding those tanks and stopping them from pushing all the way down to where I'm at, this would have been a very, very different game if he hadn't done that. So again, battle impact, you have no idea how sometimes your performance really impacts a game. He might have walked away thinking, "Oh, that was a terrible game." And individually, unfortunately, yeah, for him it was, but he might have won us the game if I'm being honest. So I'm still here on full health and I'm looking at the scoreboard and it's not looking good. They're capping. We've kind of won the western flank, but it's just heavies. They have no one to spot for them, and we have 6 tanks, they have 7 tanks. Please no 6-7 memes. And they have a pretty substantial health advantage. So I'm thinking in my head, like, all right, I know no one's left on the hill. They made their charge. And if I could kill this E75 who still thinks I'm up there because I shot him, I could use this entire flank. I have it to myself. I know there's a guy on the cap. I know they have guys camping in the back. I know they have a lot of tanks in the mid. So there's no one on the hill. And I make a real dog's breakfast out of I mean, the way I handled this E75 was just really bad. That first shot wasn't aimed well. The gun doesn't handle well enough to snap like that, unfortunately, and then I get rammed for even more damage. And I take a horrible shot there, and now I'm just like I'm throwing. I'm freaking out for no reason. I'm even going for a swim just to cap it all off. And I damage his ammo rack there, which is nice. I think that kind of messed his shot up a little bit. And then I finally go ahead and take him out. Really messy, and I took a lot of unnecessary damage, unfortunately, but thankfully, I still have a good amount of health. I have 1,000 health here, which is enough to take one shot from pretty much any tank in the game. I don't think there's any Death Stars or Yak Panzers here. So barring an ammo rack, I should be fine. And there's the tank capping. A nice, healthy, full health T124, man. And you saw right there, I didn't get spotted. So I know 2 things. He doesn't have good view range, and I'm spotting him through these trees, so he probably doesn't have great camo either. And this is why you run optics on your medium tanks, guys. You never know when you're going to be in position on a big map or just any map, really, where the view range is going to be the deciding factor. Because now I know that I can absolutely outpace this guy. I have the mobility. I've gotten the mobility to go ahead and fall back. Now I'm pushing up again. So the 50 kph, you can't really contest early positions necessarily, but you can certainly get around the map effectively with it, right? It's not as bad as the 40 kph, and this tank is more than up for it. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and go back and forth, different positions, find this guy, shoot him, reset the cap, and move again. Right before I fired, I spotted the grill. And this is a critical moment here. You're going to see me move back and forth, trying to get him to waste his shot. And what I do here at some point is I sit still and I move forward just like that. If you're consistently rocking back and forth, and also I load the hatch here, obviously, and bam, 547 damage. He doesn't like that. I'm going to get off another one here. These hash rounds really, really good. And even any HE wouldn't get in this situation, but now he's a one-shot. If I had fired nothing but Hesh there, maybe I had a better chance to set him on fire, but I wasn't going to. I only fired 1 APCR round. 1 Hesh round would have made the difference, but having Hesh there, super solid. You could have done with normal HE, but whatever. But back to what I was talking about, rocking back and forth and not stopping ever kind of gives them a little bit of a rhythm to try line up a shot. But the second you stop, they like to aim at where you are and then fire. So if you stop, count in your head just 1 Mississippi and then move forward, they're going to miss a lot. So that was a crucial. I didn't take any damage, and I made one of their last tanks a one-shot. And I just reset the E4 again. He thinks I'm on the hill here. And so once again, I'm relocating. I have this whole flank to work with, and it's just, it's such a nice thing. And right here, the light tank gets spotted, and more importantly, the light tank gets killed. And this is the point that I knew. Okay, the grill's a one shot. The E4's in the cap. I don't know what their last tank is, but he can't have much health. And I can win this game. I'm on 8,400 damage with 4 kills and 1,100 assistance. This is a monster game already by my standards. And I'm you saw me with E75. You know, my heart's elevated a little bit. I'm kind of nervous, and I get spotted here, and I just snap a shot, and this gun's just not quite good enough for it. Had I had some heat rounds, I probably would have loaded them. Probably went through because I hit the upper part of his lower plate there, I think. And I'm just super nervous. Now, every other time I've shot this guy, I've moved to a different position. So this time we're doing the mind games, right? We're coming back from the same spot. And right here, shoot him in the lower plate, don't get spotted, damage his ammo rack, and he's backing up. And I'm just thinking to myself, one more shot, and I win this game. And he goes dark, and I aim, and I fire, and I get a crit. And I'm so scared the grill's gonna pop up at any point, or wherever that last tank destroyer is. I don't know right now. I just think, screw it, we're going forward. I'm gonna aim and aim, and the second I get spotted, I'm gonna shoot. Once I see him pointing his gun at me, that's it. That's the time to take the shot. 9,100 damage, 1,179 assisting, 5 kills, 2 tanks left, and seeing that their team has 2% health, I know they're both one shots. So I load the Hesh because I see it's a Waffentrager, and there he is rushing the T95. I tell the T95 just fall back. These guys don't really have a good play on us. We have the health advantage, the position advantage, the crap gun handling advantage. There's that gun handling I'm talking about. Thankfully, he doesn't spot me. So these guys have no idea where I am right now, and the T95's in a good kind of little cubby back there. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way the Waffentrager goes over because the T95 will just shoot him. And lo and behold, there it is. He spots me. The girl knows I'm here now. I don't care. I'm not going to get one shot. I'm on 6 kills, got the top gun, roll around the corner, and shoot him. 7 kills, 9,683 damage, 1,100 assisting. So that's what, 10.7K combined, maybe 10.8K depending on the last little bits of damage there. But I don't have a lot of tanks like that, a lot of games in tanks like that, man. That was over 2,000 basics being a tier 10 game. Devastator, Top Gun, what is that? Defender medal, I think. High caliber. Wow, that game right there is why we play World of Tanks. For all the games that we have where it's your whole team dies in the first 2 minutes and you lose, or your whole team kills the enemy and you do no damage in the first 5 minutes, and even some games you do well, but it's just because you're farming. That game right there was a lot about decision making and actually felt great because I thought I've made some good choices that impacted the battle here between falling back, moving back forward, outplaying the E4, the Hesherons on the grill, and I probably won't have a game like that for the next couple months, unfortunately. That's the reality of playing in World of Tanks, but that's why we play this game, and that was my sign to make a video on the FV4202. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Talked a bit more about the gameplay than my other videos than the tank, but talked a good amount of the tank too as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Hope you guys are having a good day. Until we talk next time, take care of yourselves.